My name is Somalia and welcome to my channel. The first video I wanted to start off with from this channel is my story, my refugee story. Because I am a refugee I am a Somali refugee in Australia. And now I'm a citizen and stuff, so you know. I was a refugee, I came under a reunion visa. So I'm just gonna, take you a little bit on my journey so you get to know me. And if I'm like really, I see myself as really shiny right now. It's really hot in here. I was supposed to film this early this morning when it was cooler, but I didn't, and procrastination leads to this. So, I was gonna write down this story of mine, but I don't know, reading it and stuff, I tried it, I did a test before, it didn't really go well. It was very robotic, So I'm just gonna say what I remember of my journey, and hopefully this video won't be too long. My journey started when my mum was 6 months pregnant with me. The war in Somalia started. And we went to Ajman in the UAE, where I was born, because that's where my dad was working at the time. And then I was born there, and the funny thing is, what I realized is, I wasn't really a citizen anywhere until I was 10 years old, because in the United Arab Emirates, we lived in Ajman, where I was born, and then we moved to Dubai. I wasn't gonna get a citizenship even if I lived there for all my life. Even if I lived there till now, would have never gotten a citizenship. So we moved to Dubai and we stayed there for a few years, I think. And then we moved to Kenya when I was 5, I think. And at that time, we didn't really know what was going on. We were just like, oh, kids, how they are. We were just focused on playing. And there was a lot of, animals and like that sort of thing around where we lived, and we'd always be chasing chickens or, whatever. I remember grabbing a little baby chicken. I wanted it as a pet, and I was like, oh, it's so cute, I'm gonna look after it. But then I had like the mum chasing me until I had to like let go of the chicken. Because, she wasn't gonna let that baby go. And so I learnt from then not to bother with chickens, or just baby chickens, from their mums. So while we were in Kenya, we went to school, and for us, life was normal, but we didn't know the struggle that my mom was going through. My dad didn't live with us. He stayed in the UAE because he was working and sending us money. Mum was a Kenyan citizen, but legally we weren't. So her kids weren't legal citizens. And so we were just there on our own. I think he joined us maybe a year later. And the one thing that I don't forget till this day, he came to the door when he finally came, and I remember I didn't know who he was. I told our mum, okay, there's a guy at the door. And she said, well, that's your father. And I didn't know, and it's weird because you think, oh, you'll remember things at like 5, but I didn't remember him at all. And so we stayed in Kenya for a year after that, and then finally he had family in Australia and they sponsored us, so we came under the reunion visa since we had family here. And life here and life in Kenya were very different. I remember my first memory of coming here, sitting at the airport with my mum at Perth International Airport, or well, the airport in Perth, I don't know what it's called. I asked her, Mum, are these people sick? Why are they all so pink? And the thing is, for me, we didn't really see a lot of white people. And I didn't really know a lot of English. The English that I did know was, I learnt from Sesame Street. And she saw that, it scared me. I mean, a 7-year-old child in a completely different environment. And the funny thing is, after we moved here, we moved into a completely Anglo-Saxon neighborhood. There was literally no other black people around. And I remember going back a few years later to Uganda and Kenya to visit family. I had the same sort of shock because I grew up around mostly white people, and then I was in a sea of just, you know, black people. And I just thought, wow, I mean, this is how I feel. Like, I thought it was very different, but I embraced it because I'm a lot older, and of course, you know, I've seen other black people, but it was never to this kind of abundance. And so I thought then, can you imagine 7-year-old me coming from here to Australia and seeing a completely different environment? And so once we settled, we moved here and our family helped us settle. I remember we were put in school very quickly, and it was towards the end of the year, so I was put in the 2nd grade, and I was only in that grade for like 2 months. And then, so I don't really remember much of that school, but then my cousin, because she was at a different school and then we were all at a different school, my parents wanted us to go to the same school because she was an only child, and so to have family at school. And so we went to Cheltenham Primary, and I experienced a lot of bullying and just being ostracized. Basically, that was the form of bullying that I experienced. I tried so hard, I remember, to fit in. I would observe what everyone was into, what they played with, and I wanted to be a part of it, just seeing groups of girls hanging out and that sort of thing. I wanted to be a part of that. So I lied. I said, you know, when we were talking to classmates, I'd tell them about, you know, this lovely house that we have with a pool, and I even had a horse. Like, I went imaginative, like, you know, freaking stables and everything. And so I never thought that, you know, they'd go confirm this with one of my brothers. And he was just like, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, I don't know what she's talking about. We don't have any of that. And I was like, well, what a snake, you know. But from that, it got worse. People avoided me. I didn't have any friends. It took a long time to make one friend. I remember we were there from when I was in grade 3 to grade 5. And that one friend I had, if someday she watches this, thank you for helping me through the toughest time. We used to play with her Pokemon toys and just her toys, basically, because I didn't really have toys because we didn't have a lot coming here. So she would bring her toys, we'd play together in the sandpit. You know, Pokemon was all the rage then. And yeah, and then when I finally settled down and I was like, okay, well, I have a friend, it's all good. We moved because September 11 happened. And so my mum was worried that being Muslim, we would get the backlash. So we would get, you know, even more bullied and that sort of thing. So she took us and we went to an Islamic school, a private school, which we couldn't afford, but it was the best decision in her eyes. And I thought, okay, well, we all have the same religion in common here. I can make friends easier, but it was so much worse because it was all about, there was cliques, and the cliques were all nationalities. Afghanis hung with just Afghani people, Lebanese, same thing, and there was like no Somali girls in my class. And so I thought, okay, well, there was this one girl who was Iranian and she was bullied, and so I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna hang out with her because she doesn't have anyone else, I don't have anyone else, so we're gonna hang out. And I remember other students telling me, no, don't hang out with her. You know, there's all these rumors going on about her, stay away from her. And I'll think, okay, well, you're warning me about her, but then you're not really doing anything to include me into anything. So I said, well, whatever, better be to be bullied with someone than, you know, be bullied alone. And I only stayed there for the duration of 1 year, grade 6. And I think, because we complained about that school constantly, and I think the penny dropped for my mum when she went to my teacher and she was like, okay, well, how's she doing? And he said, well, she's not very good in English, in spelling especially, which was weird for her because in my previous school I was spelling bee champ. And so she was like, okay, well, that can't be true because that's what happened. And then he said, no, I think it's maths. No, wait, which one is your daughter again? So he had no idea who I was. And so she said, okay, well, yeah, we're gonna leave. So I started high school thinking it would be the same thing, like a lot of bullying, and I wouldn't make any friends. But I remember during orientation day, it wasn't even the first day, I already made a friend that I'm still friends with to this day. And high school life was so much easier. And the thing is, I mean, that was like when everyone was into the hip hop, the black culture and that sort of thing. And so, and my oldest brother played basketball, so he was already automatically, you know, popular. And so I was known as his sister constantly. I don't even have a name. But bullying was so much less. Like it didn't really happen. There was one girl, but it didn't really happen. Like it was easy to brush her off when you had friends and you were surrounded by people. And yeah, I think high school for me, out of all of everything else, was the best experience because it was the most easiest. It was a very easy transition. We went to a public school, we went to Sandringham College, and yeah, it was so easy. On the first day I had a group of friends already, and all through high school we were like pretty close, we were tight. There was one time when I was like, okay, well, this was going to be a real test, because I decided, okay, well, I'm gonna wear the scarf, I'm gonna wear the hijab, but I'm gonna wear like tight, you know, so I'm gonna wear it as a scarf sort of. And I was so nervous, I was so scared that first day. And I remember sitting in the car with my dad in front of the school thinking, what if they leave me? What if I don't have friends after this? And he said, well, then they weren't your friends to begin with. I mean, yeah, that's easy to say, but then I'm gonna be all alone at school. So when I did go to school, I told the teachers, I said, okay, well, this is for a religious purpose, so I'm gonna be wearing this now, from now on. And it was white, so it didn't really clash with the school uniform. And they were fine with it. And then my friends, they were curious. They were like, oh, you know, new look, what's that about? So I told them, and after that it was just nothing. It was as if it wasn't even there. And to me, that was the best feeling, because all this time, like just being bullied constantly in the past, I had people who just thought, okay, well, yeah, that's fine. You're different, but we respect you for that. I remember my best friend coming over, and I never really wanted her to stay long because, okay, well, you know, my parents are going to tell me to pray, and then she's going to find that weird, and you know, it's going to be a whole thing at school. So I would pray, and she would watch me, and she was like, that looks really cool. Like, she was just very curious about it. But there was never anything negative. It was always just, tell us more. And it was just that. It was more curiosity than anything else. And I was so happy with that, because like I would tell them everything I knew, and it was nothing, it was nothing big, it wasn't a big deal to them, which, you know, was good for me. I mean, usually people have a very hard time during high school, and there's a lot of bullying and that sort of thing. But for me, it was more when I first came to the country, and it was, you know, it was harder then than it was now. And going into uni, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, obviously, eventually I decided to take it off. It was more of a convenience when I had it on. It wasn't, because I was a teenager, I was very tomboyish. I didn't really care about looking after my hair. So, you know, my mom was like, okay, well, you're not doing it for any religious reason. You're basically just hiding your hair so you don't have to brush it. And then, you know, so she took me to the hairdressers, and I took it off, and, you know, I got my hair done and everything. And then I was very worried that my grandmother was gonna say something the first time I saw her without it. Like out, not at the house. Since, you know, the older generation are more instilled in their ways, and she was quite religious, so I thought, okay, oh god, she's gonna say something. But no, she was just like, oh my god, I love your curls, your hair looks amazing, and that sort of thing. But she never once questioned, why don't you wear it anymore? Aren't you afraid of God? All this sort of stuff. She never said anything. She just said, oh, you know, your hair looks lovely, it looks like it's grown, and that sort of thing. And I was like, wow, she's totally cool with this. And so I thought, okay, well, if she's cool with it, then, you know, it's fine. And then, you know, going into uni and just being accustomed, just getting into Australian life, it was, as I grew up, it was so much easier for me. Once I got rid of my primary school days, it was so much easier. High school was easier. When I went into TAFE, when I went into uni, all that was so much easier than what I'd experienced before. And I mean, now I call Australia home, because not having a citizenship anywhere in the world for 10 years was, you know, I didn't think anything of it then, but I mean, I recently just thought, wow, I was a citizen nowhere. And you know, people will say, oh, you know, you're Somali because your parents are Somali, so you know, that's home. How can somewhere where you've never been be home? Because for me, it's like, okay, well, I've never been. Mum left when I was in the womb. I was born in another country, raised in you know, in different places. And then from 7 years till now, this is where I was raised. This is what I call home. So I don't understand why people would, you know, mostly the Somali community, you know, say that Somalia is home because it's of your parents' home, if that makes sense. Like, you know, they're Somali, you're Somali, that's home. You should, you know, someday want to go back and that sort of thing. I mean, Australia's home to me because I didn't really know anywhere else for as long as I knew here. I mean, we've been here 19 years now, and everything, I've traveled, but this is what I call home. Like, I can't see myself living somewhere else. So now I studied animation and I studied interior design. I don't really use either. I do every now and then, but I'm a speaker. I go into high schools and talk to mainly high school girls about the experiences I went through, bullying and how to overcome it and that sort of thing. And for me, you know, drawing was a huge part in my life, in overcoming my adversities. It was a way for me to express what I'm feeling, because I was never really a talkative person. I was always bottle it up, you know, don't show anyone your weaknesses, and that's just how I was. So it all came out on paper. And so I'm going to be starting a series of peer pressure and just doing a lot of videos and that sort of thing on how I handled peer pressure, because being split from, you know, what your parents expect of you culture-wise and that sort of thing, but then when the culture clashes with the Western culture, it's like, okay, well, I want to, you know, do what my friends are doing, but then it's like, oh, can I? Because it says here I can't, and, you know, my parents say one thing, I want to do what my friends are doing, and just all that, and how to not give in to peer pressure and just kind of lose yourself in the process. So I'll be just talking about that sort of thing using my experiences. So, you know, if you're interested in that sort of thing, and maybe I might have tips that might help you, yeah, just subscribe and I will be doing this from now on.